Hello there. My name is Erica. I'm the JPIT Communications intern, and joining me today are Steve Tinning, the Baptist Public Issues Enabler, and Adam Aucock, JPIT Advocacy Coordinator.
Me, I've got a very croaky voice, but I'll do my best.
That's okay. It's the content that matters. I've got a few questions for both of you to introduce the family reunion campaign. So first of all, Adam, why don't you start? What is Refugee Family Reunion and how does it work currently?
Yeah, so I guess the most kind of simple way of putting it is that the Refugee Family Reunion Scheme is the way in which someone who has been granted refugee status in the UK, so they've had their claim processed and they've been awarded that status as a refugee, they can apply to have their immediate family members join them in the UK, and so that is spouses, partners, and children. That's what's kind of classified as an immediate family member under the scheme. The kind of question of how it works currently is a bit difficult because since September the government have paused that scheme. So at the moment it doesn't work, but they are planning to reopen it. They say in the spring with some changes.
Yeah, so what are some of those changes that the government are proposing then?
So from September, the government paused this scheme and they basically said, we're going to kind of review it and look at it. So at the moment, there's currently no kind of dedicated family reunification or family reunion schemes for refugees in particular. They would have to go through the same sponsorship routes and things that other migrants have to go through. And they typically have kind of very high fees and things like that. That make it hard for refugees to access them. What the government's planning to do is that, like I say, reopen it in the spring. And although their plans aren't super clear, the indications are that they will create. They're calling a new kind of core protection category that would, once you have obtained refugee status. You would sit in this core protection category, and while in that core protection category, you would not have access to family reunion. So you wouldn't be able to apply for those immediate family members to come and join you and start rebuilding your life. You would have to wait until you move on to a scheme that they are calling in-country protection work and study. It's a bit difficult to describe because they haven't told us exactly what that's going to involve, exactly what you will need to do to get onto that scheme, whether there would be any application fees, whether there would be any minimum earning criteria, whether you would have to be working towards a certain educational achievement to be able to get onto one of these kind of routes. But you would have to wait until you were able to do that before you can apply to have your family join you. And so that is on top of the kind of months and at times years that it can take people to have their asylum claims processed. For all that time, you can't apply for your family to join you. You would have to wait an additional period of time.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating, and really great that JPIT are setting up this new campaign to try and address some of these issues. Steve, I'm going to bring you in now. How
Mm.
has JPIT engaged with this issue before?
Yeah, thank you. As you probably know, we've been involved in advocating for safe routes for a very long time, and family reunion is one of those that has been around for a while, and we honestly, I didn't see it being threatened anytime soon. It was one of those that was so obviously the right thing to do and so obviously humane that in truth, JPIT has long supported efforts to expand it. At one point we were campaigning to have aunts and uncles counted for unaccompanied asylum seeking children when they've lost their mums and dads in the process, or they've died and they want to be reunited with aunts and uncles or siblings. We were trying to get it expanded so that immediate family was interpreted more broadly. Recognizing it as a humane and practical expression of justice, it just seemed to make a lot of sense. So to see it now under such jeopardy is really heartbreaking. We've previously worked with churches and partner organisations, like Safe Passage have been a good ally and friend to us in a lot of this, to advocate for this broader eligibility, simpler processes, policies that prioritise, family unity, and campaigns have highlighted the importance of keeping families together as part of a compassionate asylum system, and have encouraged churches to speak up for policies that reflect welcome and dignity, as you would expect us to, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So honing in a bit more then, how will these changes impact children specifically? Adam, maybe if you can tell us a bit more about that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a really good question because, like Steve was saying, this is one of the only ways that people can come to the UK via a safe route to be reunited with family members who have achieved that refugee status. So over the last 5 years, 54% of those, so a majority of the people that came through refugee family reunion were children. So that has stopped people having to take their children on incredibly dangerous journeys or reduced the number of people having to do that, and given them a kind of safe route to get to the UK after their parent has been able to claim a refugee status. So just this pause, not to mention the kind of the possibility that this becomes a longer term barriers to this scheme. The British Red Cross have estimated that up to 6,300 children would be impacted by the pause, and 1,500 of those children are unaccompanied. So that means they don't have that kind of immediate family member wherever they are at the moment. And regularly, if the scheme was working how it would be, their parent that has achieved refugee status in the UK would be able to apply for them to come. So the impact on children is huge because it's them that tend to not be taken through these kind of dangerous routes and left with other family members or left with extended family members. So if we see this kind of the criteria being increased and the numbers of people that are eligible for family reunion, we'll see more children and more unaccompanied children unable to reunite with their parents.
Thank you so much for sharing that extra detail, Adam. I think it's really important that we highlight particularly the impact that it could have on children. So coming towards our actions and what's going to come out of this campaign in terms of how people can get involved. Steve, can you tell us why is it important that we as Christians should be speaking up on this issue?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it would be wrong not to start with our shared humanity, that all of this stuff should be instinctive to us. We understand the pain of family separation and the importance of belonging at a very human level. But for Christians, there is a theological dimension as well.
Yeah.
Scripture repeatedly calls God's people to welcome the stranger and care for those seeking refuge and to care for the poor and the vulnerable, care for widows. It's so consistent throughout the whole of Scripture. Jesus himself experienced life as a refugee when his family fled to Egypt. Imagine they had been separated along the way. Wouldn't you want them to have been brought back together? Throughout the whole Bible, the well-being of family is closely tied to justice and compassion in society. So, speaking up isn't about partisanship. It's not about party politics. It's about witnessing to the values of the heart of the Christian faith of hospitality and mercy and the conviction that families should not be unnecessarily torn apart and divided. At its heart, Refugee Family Reunion asks, what kind of society are we becoming? What do we want to be? And what does it mean to reflect God's welcome in public life?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that our listeners have been spurred on by both of you talking so passionately about this issue. What exactly can church leaders and their communities do about this in response to this JPIT
Yeah,
campaign?
so this is the crunch, isn't it? Churches need to recognise that we are not powerless in the face of changes like this. One of the most important things church leaders can do is to help their communities, their churches understand what's happening, why it matters, create space for prayer and reflection and important conversations around how we respond as followers of Christ. But there is this really tangible, practical opportunity to act that we have as well. We've got this up and coming campaign. It's inviting churches and church leaders to add their voice to a collective letter to the Home Secretary. You can look in the notes of the podcast to get a link to that letter. And it's basically calling for the protection of family reunion and humane pathways for families to stay together. I think signing that letter and sharing that letter is a simple but meaningful way for churches to speak with a united voice. We're really hoping hundreds, if not thousands, of community leaders, church community leaders, and other faith community leaders will want to sign that. So, but alongside signing that campaign letter to the Home Secretary, who herself has once spoken in favour of the family reunion rights and wanted to expand it when she was a backbencher. So this might just speak to her conscience and her heart. Churches are encouraged to share that letter, with their MP, helping their elected representatives understand why family reunion matters to their communities, passing it on, perhaps with a short note, a personal note as to why it matters to you, strengthens its impact and connects national advocacy with the local relationships that you have with your MPs. So, both of those things would be wonderful.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for talking about the campaign and how our listeners can get involved. Thank you for listening.